certainly a more expensive service than it is today.
Certainly.
Today you have your phone in your pocket.
Right.
You have an iPhone.
Right.
So why would every building need a picture? And you explained it to me. Practically every old historic building in Tampa has a photo of it, a very, very high quality photo. And they can be found mostly on the county's website, right? In the library system.
Website, yeah.
And you, on your page, oldtampaphotos.com, there's this amazing collection of not only the pictures, but some of the stories and the people behind them.
Right.
And I think we've known each other maybe 2 years, let's say.
Sounds right.
But our families go way back.
Way back.
Way, way back.
Yeah.
You grew up on Davis Islands with my family back
did.
in the day and that whole thing.
Yep.
And we've stayed connected for a few different reasons. But one of them is because whenever I get invited to go speak, like at the Garden Club, for example, I wanted to talk about how green spaces and public spaces are so important for cities.
Right.
And so through that, I wanted to look at old photography. I always text your permission. Hey, can I use something from the website? And you're so gracious to say yes. But the last time we got coffee, I think you were explaining to me why there are photos of all of these historic buildings that were kept. I think you were mentioning it's because, a building was put up for sale, or the work of a brick manufacturer or window manufacturer would pay for this service.
Right. Yeah. The Burgert brothers, which really is the majority of the old photographs that we see on the library website and some at USF, they were commercial photographers. And unlike today, where I go around photographing all these buildings just because I'm so obsessed with it, they got paid to do it. And yeah, if there was one for sale, if you look at the some of the old clubs, certainly Ybor City, the majority of those people, the buildings were for sale or they were used for some commercial purpose. And that's the reason that the Burgerts would go and photograph it. The Burgerts, there was another firm called Robertson and Fresh who did some of that same work, the kind of friendly competitors for the Burgert brothers. But that was the reason. It was commercial work, and they got paid for going out. You mentioned a second ago that all of these high-quality photographs. Well, they were shooting with an 8x10 camera, and so the negative is 8 inches by 10 inches. And if you get the exposure right, you are going to have significant detail because negatives that large can render a terrific photograph versus your iPhone these days. It can take a photo, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not going to be the same resolution.
Yeah, 8x10, like, I don't know, those little strips you'd bring into like Eckerd's back in the day that, it'd have a long strip of like 6 or 8 or something like that photo. So 8x10, that's a huge.
8x10, so yeah, 10 inches by 8 inches, huge. And you only got one shot because you had to take the film, put it in there, take the picture, take it out, and then put another piece of film in. Exactly.
Like this right here on my wall in the studio, it's off camera, but it's a photo of the Columbia, probably from the 40s, it looks like, with those vehicles. But as example, that photo was blown up big from a smaller negative. And how big could you get with an 8x10? Like how much detail? Like some of those old, like for instance, I'm trying to think at like the History Center, if they have anything big blown up, or even like, for example, across from City Hall, there's that mosaic, right? That was probably taken from a larger version of a print photograph or something like that.
If you walk down the 7th Avenue in Ybor City, I want to say in front of the Photography Museum, people use it. It kind of looks like a billboard. So it's a little blurry, but it still looks great. And people have used these photos forever. Since 1920s.
And what's the deal with this collection at the library? Like, where did they find all of these photos to put online?
So we're going to need to schedule, a few more days to talk about it. The bottom line is the collection was there. The Burgerts got out of the business, and through some not so great circumstances, a guy ended up having to sell the collection, and he sold it to another man who ended up selling it then. First, he wanted to sell it to the state of Florida for $10,000. And this is 50,000 images. And the state of Florida said, man, we would love to have them, but we don't have 10 grand. So he then went to the library and said, they're for sale. We'd love to have them. We don't have 10 grand. And so what he came up with is if we make these publicly available and the library gets credit, I think he sold them for $2,000 to what was called the Friends of the Library.
And these, it says on the website 20,000, but maybe the entire collection is 50.
Correct.
So let's say 20 to 50,000 somewhere
Right.
in their photos.
Right.
Were these literal physical photos he had? Or
The
were
majority of them, I'm going to say half and half because I've seen where they're storing the negatives. And when they sat in a garage in South Tampa in a file cabinet for 10 years.
Oh my God.
And film doesn't do that well in heat. So a lot of them were very deteriorated, and they just got busy. They went through the negatives and they found the ones that looked like they were in the worst shape and started digitizing those, and have moved forward ever since.
So all of these black and white photos of Ybor, there's, you can go into many, many different shops around this city and in fact the region and find different books, right? I mean, we've all seen these black and white photos. So all of them practically came from this collection.
Correct.
Wow.
And there are some that aren't in the collection. And I'll refer to the King Greco photo that you shared with me a couple of weeks ago. What a fantastic photo. That was by Robertson and Fresh. I've never seen it before, but what an important historical photo that is of something of history of Ybor City. And so my guess is that some photographs are in private collections. They're not all there, but the majority of them, yes, are there.
And so if people want to visit this, all you really have to do, if you just Google Burgert, Burgert, Brothers Photographic Collection on Google, you can find the Hillsborough County Public Library website. It's the first link. And they've got, it says here, over 20,000 images. Uh-oh, now it's not letting me show details. I'm getting the... this connection is not private message, but it's 20,000 images from the late 1800s to the early 1960s taken by this company, Burgert Brothers Photographers,
Right.
Photographers, right? And they're all beautiful images. Like they whatever technology they used to scan these things was like basically perfect. I mean, these are like print quality images.
Right.
They're also tagged. Like I've typed in hardware store to try to find maybe old family stuff.
Right.
Like there's a lot of cool stuff in there. So I encourage people, if you're an old time Tampa family, like put your last name in this thing or
your address.
Because
your house might be there if it's an older home. I did an entire presentation at the library. You can see it at TBAE, Tampa Bay Arts and Entertainment Network. You can look for it there. And I did a whole presentation on how you search that collection if you're interested, because there are some quirks to it. There are some tips to know if you're going to go for it. But it is an absolutely fantastic collection and visual history of Tampa from one end to the other. The people, not just the buildings. I mean, you see some of these people back, Gasparilla and other festivals, the Florida State Fair. For a guy my age to be able to look back at some of that stuff and remember what was there and so on is really pretty cool.
Well, one of the cool things you do on your website is you tell a story with these pictures. So you'll have the older picture and then you'll have the, what it looks like today, basically, right next to it.
Right.
And then you've got, some particular information about it. But this for a Tampa like history nerd like me, I'd love this website.
Yeah.
What inspired you to start something like this? It's very unique.
And you're right. Tampa history is a thing for me. Back in 2020-ish, my main business was food photography and doing portraits. Then COVID hit and there was no more portraits. There was very little food photography, and I was bored. I had seen the Burgert collection before, but not really dove into it, and so I got into it, and some of the first photographs I saw were of downtown Tampa from Davis Island in the 50s. And I came to Tampa in 1964. And so when I saw downtown from Davis Island, I'm like, man, I remember that. I wonder what it looks like now. Took my digital camera down there and shot it again. And I'm like, this is really, really cool. I wonder what it would look like in film. And I have a medium format film camera, so not quite 8x10, but it's still a relatively large negative took that down there and fired some off. And thus the obsession began, because after I did that, let me do some more. And it just kept growing. I took several of those and I sent them to photo editors, and I showed them the old photo, I showed them my film photo, and then I showed them the digital. And I said, which one of these is the best for now? And they said, use the colored digital for now, because that's really what the technology is. And then that's what happened. The first book came out, and I think it was about 100 pages. And I talked to the History Center. They said, yeah, we'd love to sell it. And they did. And I guess it was the second highest selling book at the History Center that year. So that was sort of proof of concept. From there, that just lit the fire under me, because
Yeah.
I loved it. And I just couldn't get enough of it.
David, I think I've got 2 of those books on that back table. Could you grab them and so people can see them if they want? So if someone wants to pick a copy up, they can go to the History Center and find it.
And they can see them actually on the 4th floor at the library, because they have them at the library as well.
Yeah, show these to this camera, Chip. So these are you've put these together.
Yes. And so the first book was a paperback, and it sold, went crazy, and it was about 100 pages. And so I said, well, let me keep going with this. Now there's over 1,000 pages
Wow.
of before and after, and that's just the Burgert collection. On the website, I've gone a little more crazy with the whole thing.
And there's a forward by the History Center's Rodney Kite Powell.
Wow, what a great guy. You talk about a brain trust.
Oh yeah.
Rodney just knows it all. He's such a good guy.
It's basically a book version of your website. You've got sort of like the, here's a photo. We just spoke about this building.
Yes,
right?
we did.
This is the building that just got demolished, where a new condominium is going up right across from Curtis Hickson, which was the Tribune building, I think, from what you told me initially.
So, David, if you scroll back,
That's
go
the
back.
that's the furniture building.
Go back
that
a
went down
couple,
across the
because
street.
all of these are connected. Go back one more. So this was the Tar Furniture Building, and it was built by Wallace Stovall, who was the editor of the Tampa Tribune. And he was in the building next door. He built this for Tar Furniture, and in the middle of it, he said, hey, listen, I really want this building. Can I back out of it? And they said, no, you can't. So he went ahead and he leased it to Tar, and then go ahead, next photo. This is what it looked like more recently. It had the first watch in it, and then the next photo. Then they decided to tear it down.
Look at the architecture, though.
Look at the architecture. God. Isn't that something?
Losing something like that is just so disgusting. I mean, really, it's like terrible that it got torn down.
With the promise, supposedly, of the people who were putting up the 40-something story high-rise are going to put a facsimile of this on the first few floors and kind of sort of make it look like that. David, can we go to the next one?
We'll see how that ends up. I'm
I
not
know.
holding my breath.
And here it is, demolished, and then one more time. And this is the new building.
Mm-hmm.
So the bottom part of it is going to have supposedly part of the old Tar Furniture
A facade, right, made to look like it used to.
Which is better than nothing.
100%. Absolutely.
And yet, maybe we'll see if we go on a little farther that it could have been preserved. And so what Stovall decided to do is, I'm going to go across the street and I'm going to build this for the Tampa Tribune. The tall towers were where the offices were, the printing press and everything else were in the shorter towers. And so he put that together. In the mid-1920s, Wallace, I guess, was a gambling man. A woman came to him, I think her last name was Gunby. She said, I want to buy your paper for $1.2 million, and I'm going to give you a $5,000 deposit and give me 30 days to raise the $1.2 million. He knew there was no way she was going to raise that money. He took her $5,000 and she raised it. Then he's all squirmy and saying, oh my gosh, please, let's just cancel this deal. They wouldn't do it, so he ended up selling the paper. He kept the building, but he had to sell the paper. And let's go to the next one. Eventually, they took down that shorter building in front, and this became the GTE Federal Credit Union building. And go to the next. And now that one is coming down as well.
And so go back one, David. I think I read that maybe 1960s era, they put a new facade
They
on it.
did. They not a new facade. I mean, they took the guts out of it because again, some of these older buildings are just wood inside. So they
Right.
took the guts and added steel, which they needed to do. But as far as salvageability is concerned, I don't know that this one was salvageable because there really wasn't a lot of history left in it.
Well, go back a few slides, David, to the Tar Furniture building. It's a shame that these buildings come down. At the same time, you have to imagine how old they are and some
Yes.
of those building standards.
Yes.
I mean, how many hurricanes and rainstorms have we had since when was this building built? Late 18 or early 19,
Early 1920,
10,
something like that.
20,
Yeah.
something like that. Thousands and thousands of storms over the years. It's all wood structures,
Right.
termites, etc.
Right.
Apparently, from what I understand, the building was not able to be saved. I, anything can be saved with enough money, but at the end of the day, there's got to be a better way to protect these things. Once you lose them, you don't get them back.
Right.
We've talked about that before.
Right.
These things are so gorgeous and they're really relics of an old Tampa, but also they represent this like beautiful era of architecture.
Right.
I mean, there's so many buildings that have came down. But anyway, I'm happy they're building that facade because at least if done correctly, it could sort of look and feel, and be representative of that old era.
Yeah.
We'll see how it turns out. When I hear facade, I go, okay, it's going to be like Disneyland fake.
It's a reference.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Go ahead and advance a couple, David. One more. Go again. And one more time. So this was the Knights of Pythias building. And so Wallace was pissed off because he couldn't get his paper back. So he decided he was going to open a competitive paper called the Tampa Telegraph. He was going to buy it for his son. He bought this building. He bought the very best equipment they could find and started this paper. It only lasted a few months because eventually I think he ended up selling to the people who owned his paper before. And go ahead, one more. And here's what's there now. So it was on this corner back in the day.
Wow.
So there's that whole story. You've got photographs of the building, the Tar Furniture, then the Tribune, and then this. They're all linked through Stovall, who had a lot of buildings in downtown Tampa. That's the stuff that juices me.
So when you're, looking at these old pictures, I'm sure you're fascinated by them, right?
Yes.
And clearly, you can go around town and see what's there today. But where are you gathering these stories, the history from?
Lots of places, and I've kind of gone by this idiom that every picture has a story, not necessarily tells one. And some of it's in the digging. I love the Tampa Tribune archive. It is full of stuff because I see it as factual. And sometimes I can find some backup to it. There are other sites on the internet that have history to them. If I'm looking for addresses, the Tampa City Directory, you can also find at the library that has your family is in there with their address and maybe even their career, because that's what we used to print in public print. So those are there. As I'm looking through some of this, you look at some of these photographs and there's no address on the building. So I can go and I can look in the paper, I can look in the city directory and try to see if I can nail it down. And then the fun part for me is going on Google Maps and opening where the address is supposed to be now. And I can look at photographs, at least back to the early 2000s, and see some of the transitions that have happened there too. And so there's all kinds of tools that I can use for history, but there's also some apps and things that I can use photographically that help me replicate what was there, including like which direction the light is coming from and things like that.
Right.
So there's a whole science.
You want to get that sort of perfect angle that represents the exact position.
Better believe it.
Interesting. So this is sort of what this represents. This is the intersection, the particular place the photographer was standing in.
Right.
When it almost looks like a castle. Go back one, David. It's like this.
Yeah.
The Tampa Telegraph, huh?
And it was the Knights of Pythias, which was a fraternal organization before that, and then they bought it from them, and the Tampa Telegraph opened.
So the Tampa Telegraph at the time was like maybe today's version of what we do with Tampa Bay Developer, like this new social media news, conversation oriented thing?
I think that it was just a poke in the eye to the newspaper that there were two then, and this was the third. So it was just a poke in the eye of, we're going to take over because we got the latest, greatest stuff. Because he was pissed that he couldn't get his paper back. And fortunately, a couple of years later, the the Big Depression hit, and he didn't lose money when all that happened because he was able to hang on to his real estate.
So how long did his Telegraph, Tampa Telegraph
I
last
want to
for?
say it was only like 9 months,
Oh,
something like that.
wow.
Yeah. And
Interesting
David, can
building.
you go forward one or two here?
Before we jump on that, let me ask you about this Tribune archive. That's
Go ahead.
interesting to me. Is it a website you can access?
It is. You can. There's two ways to access it. I pay my $8 a month, and it goes all the way back into the 1800s. Wow. It's phenomenal. There's some tips and tricks for navigating that as well, but I mean, I can look at your family. I can find just about anything on those archives.
What's the name of the website?
Just look up Tampa Tribune Archives. I don't remember the.
I'll find it later. David, you can continue with those photos. I just wanted to be sure to mark that down because that sounds really interesting.
I want to say that it's referenced on the front page of my website. So this building was called the Scazzari Brothers Building. It's in Ybor City. It might look familiar to you. Go to the next, David. It's where the original Blind Tiger was. Beautiful old brick building. Back in the 70s, it was condemned. They were going to tear it down, but they didn't, and someone took it and preserved it. It was where the original La Tropicana was. It was also where this place called the Ovo Cafe back in the 80s, which I used to love to go to. But again, they decided that they were going to sell it, and they did. And the gentleman came in, I'll think of his name in a second, and this is what they did. They didn't tear the whole thing down. They actually preserved it by just the facade. They stuck steel beams up along it. Go to the next, David. Is there better? Yeah. So this is the front. You can see inside. This just held the front and the side of the building up, and that's it. But it's preservation. We can still go and touch that building and
Right.
say, this is from the 1920s. And my whole idea, because people say, it's just a facade, what does that matter? And my thought is, because of the nostalgia of it, my question is, would you rather have an AI photo of your grandmother, or would you like a photo of her, the real thing where you can really know what it looked like? And I'm just all about it. And here's what it's looking like now. They've gone back in with steel and concrete. He's adding a third floor to it. And I just applaud him because it was a lot of money to make that happen like that, and yet he did it.
And to do it the right way.
To do it the right way.
Facade.
Right.
Yeah, there's something about our world that is going to create so much more value to things that are intrinsic, Like the AI grandmother picture is a perfect example.
Yeah.
People are going to be faced with some of those choices in the future.
Yeah.
Regarding movies and music, any sort of art, but also architecture itself, especially historic architecture.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
real is going to have an increased value
Yeah.
now and moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, we've talked about this building on a recent show. I forgot which one, but I was just saying, wow, what a undertaking.
Yeah.
The building had tenants before, right? It was
Right.
like the Blind Tiger and all that.
Right.
You didn't have to spend, this must cost at least $10 million to,
I would imagine.
Yeah,
would
to do
imagine.
this whole thing. But again, what the community will be left with is the real facade. And guess what? Now that all this work is done, it'll last another 100 years.
Yes. With the steel and all the reinforcement and stuff, yeah, it should last a really long time.
So this original photo here, this is maybe from the 70s.
It was from the 70s. There was a project, and I can't think of the name of it. It was right around the time when a lot of things were going crazy in Ybor, and they went around and took a lot of photos of the old buildings because they thought they were going to lose them. And this is just one of them. There's a whole archive of those. And again, I'll think of it in a second.
So have you done the research to figure out exactly why they took so many photos in the 70s of the pictures in Ybor? Because that story checks out through urban renewal and the crime wave and some of the, the urban decay generally. A lot of these buildings just sat there for decades.
David, can we get to the title of this? I see it up there in the corner. No, keep going. No, back.
All the way back, David, to that photo.
That there you go. Nope, one more. Keep going, keep going, keep going to the Ebor photo. Keep going.
I think it's
There,
number 8.
there, that. See the title up there in the corner? Any way we can read that?
General view from the northwest.
But does it have who the
Scozzari Brothers Building, 1901 East 7th Avenue.
right?
I'm actually zoom in, David. I'm actually buying that building in the photo, Casa Lala, which I don't think I
are
told
you
you
really?
yet, Chip.
Very
yeah, I'm
cool.
under contract to buy that.
Okay.
It's a little blurred out. Zoom out, David. So that building, and I might even talk. Well, I guess we can talk right now about it. But any sort of recommendations on research, I want to historically preserve it as best I can and really nod to what it was. I think it was built in 1930 or 33.
I think I photographed that building, and I may have some history on it. I'd have to go back and look.
Okay,
It's
sweet.
not something that I've done.
I definitely want to get with you. I just noticed it in the corner there.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited about it. I'm going to move, the studio and my offices and everything over there
Very cool.
in the next few months. So that's going to be really exciting.
Awesome.
And especially just to get back into Ybor City. My family sold their old building, the hardware store on 8th Avenue, I think in 76. So here I am 50 years later coming back. So it's kind of a special thing.
Can you advance to, because there's a picture of the over, keep going, one more time. There.
Yeah. Look at that.
The King Greco building.
That's so cool.
And there it is today. Yeah.
I have some more old photos here that I showed you, but some of those storefronts back in the day that they had were so intricate. Every little storefront had a story with all the different products on it. Before they had magazines, of course, and certain publications, but nothing on the internet, certainly, right? Nothing on TV. And so the storefront, that was your advertising.
How did you bring people in?
Right.
And there were competitions as window dressing all along 7th Avenue, and probably true with your family's store as well. How do you get people to come through the door? And competitions were big, especially during the holidays. Get those kids in there to buy the toys. And that was part of it. And what it's turned into today, if you can go to the next one, David.
Bam.
Yeah, Disco Pony.
Disco Pony. So that used to be, I don't remember the name of it.
Rock Brothers was.
Well, Rock Brothers Brewery.
Right.
And then like 25 years ago, it was a gay sex shop kind of thing.
Yep.
I forgot the name, but
Yep.
I went in there with my dad and grandfather.
I love it.
And my grandfather was just laughing and thinking about, obviously, all the old memories. He grew up in that store.
Yeah.
His father, my great-grandfather, had owned that store.
Yeah.
And he was just like, oh, my God, if they could see this building with these, they had all the...
Well, all that's actually on the website as well. So look up the King Greco.
David, what's the go to Old Tampa Photos, because you recently did a page about this building.
Correct.
And where would we find it? Probably under Ybor City.
Ybor City. So down at the bottom.
Right there.
And just look for King Greco. There should be an alphabetical.
People listening, you guys have to check this website out, oldtampaphotos.com.
No, go back up.
All these buildings have a story.
Keep going.
Where is she? There it is, right there on the left. Yeah.
And so there's part of the story, but these are photos that I've taken over the years. You can see the store window of the
Gabor.
Yep.
That whole thing.
MC Film Fest store. And here it is when the Rock Brothers took it over. They gutted the whole thing and put in new floors and everything, and then opened Rock Brothers. And they closed, I guess, about a year ago, and Disco Pony moved in.
It's so interesting how these buildings, especially this one, I mean, we've talked about some that get torn down, change, etc.
Right.
It's so interesting to see these story arcs of these different businesses and people, and then you imagine the memories inside of them and the stories, and this building in particular, I think, was built in the late 1800s, because I found a newspaper article from 1940 that talks about the restoration
Okay.
of this old building,
I
right? And
love
the
it.
newspapers from 1940.
Yeah.
So I think it was from the 1800s.
Okay.
They incorporated their hardware store in 1926, and then did some sort of a renovation like 20 years later
All
or
right.
whatever it is. And then if you scroll up, David, this picture is from 2016, I guess, when Rock Brothers took over, right? And there it is, completely gutted with a dirt floor. So you think about the different eras through the decades of these, all these different buildings across our city.
But so what? Why does that mean something to you? Why does it mean something to me? Why am I so obsessed with this? Because it's a building, and they can put another one, they can keep the same. So what? What is it that is so compelling? Photographic evidence of your past, but so what? Why does that mean so much to you?
I guess I'm not exactly sure. It sparks a feeling inside of me. There's something warm, like familiar and warm and comfortable,
Yep.
like happy. I
Yep.
don't know, but why is it? You tell me. And we should tell people too, you're a psychiatrist, right?
I'm a
Psychologist.
mental health counselor.
And so I'm sure you've thought about this, right? Throughout these, digging into history and talking, because I'm sure families reach out to you, et cetera, talking about their heritage and all that. But you tell me, why do people feel so compelled and drawn to this sort of thing?
My first question was about myself. What am I doing here? Because I'm up till midnight some nights, and my wife's like, "Come on, let's go. It's, time to hit the hay." And I really just kind of looked inside about what was so compelling about these images, and I think it does have to do with it reminds me of where I was and what I've seen. And I think, there's a lot of analysis about the way the human brain works. There's one part of it, it's on most of the time, that's predictive. That's what helps us survive of what's going to happen next. Some people, it's in hyperdrive, and they have anxiety disorders and all that stuff. But the predictive part of our brain kind of looks forward. But I also think there's a part of our brain that's very nostalgic. It does tap into our emotions. It does hit us with that dopamine of when we see something that's familiar. And as we're looking through stuff, for me especially, historians are all dopamine addicts because we find this thing. As I'm looking at a photograph, or you're looking at a photograph, and at first you don't see it, and then all of a sudden it's familiar. There's just this rush. And it's not just about the building. I also have a food blog, and so I go around for years and years taking pictures of food. Recently put out an article on devil crab, which is just, you want to talk about fighting words when you start comparing one to the other, and this isn't the best. I took a very scientific approach, and I weighed it and measured it and did all that stuff, and I finally put the results online. But people are so attached to their belief in their devil crab. They're stroking out when I say this one's better than that one, and they'll get online and and that's cool with me. That's what this is about, is just the conversation.
Right.
You're entitled to whatever opinion you want. Don't get pissed with me just because I put mine out there. But it's not because theirs is the best tasting, because they haven't been to 20 different devil crab places. It's related to where they were, who they were with that time in their life. And we went there for devil crab, and they are the best ones that are ever made because that's what it reminds me of, that nostalgia piece. I think we all need that. This world of craziness and all the predictions that our brains are doing every day, it is very comforting to be able to look back and remember those important, meaningful times. Why do people, their favorite song from high school, they'll play it over. Okay, it's just a song. You can listen to another one, but we connect our bodies and our lives to some of this old stuff. Look at trends that return, film cameras and vinyl records, and it's just a thing. I think it's something we need to have in our lives.
I think it is too. I think it's critical. And I also think that it rubs against our own country's sort of like ideological stance on everything, which is all about the economics. And it's all about what's new, what's fresh, how do we improve it, how do we change it, how do we make it better?
Yeah.
Which is kind of inherently like I don't want to use the word noble, but there's nothing wrong certainly with that, right? But if you visit other places, you understand pretty quickly that, oh, that isn't the top priority here. Like the top priority isn't to try to figure out the highest and best use of this particular piece of land. And even if it's old, tear it down and build new.
Right.
Other places around the world, and certainly our ancestors who came to this country, had that intrinsic, whatever that value we're talking about was at the forefront. I mean, like, David, if you could pull up just on that main page, like look at some of the old architecture of those mutual aid societies, those
Yes.
civic clubs. Like
Yeah.
when they built these buildings, they were meant to exemplify that culture's, I don't know, fight to come here.
Yeah.
Like that Cuban club is just this cathedral, this like monolith building. Today, we all know it wouldn't be built like that. You know,
Right.
it would be built with like the cost-effective approach and this insulation value. It would be a
Right.
million different things other than it's intrinsically beautiful. It represents our people, right? And that's even expressed like I love the story about the small gas station here.
Oh man.
And we can talk about that
Oh
too.
my
That
gosh. Yeah.
that Tudor style
Yeah.
gas station. But again, I think it's an American thing. I think that because in America we value value, we value money, and we have a very capitalistic approach to everything we do. That's the lens we look at these things through. And so like the building earlier we were raving about, and we were, sucks to see that thing get torn down. Again, at the forefront was not, through the city government, the county, through the government and the private sector, what can we do to save this? And then what can we do to create something new out of it, through it, with it, around it? That's not the case.
I wonder if you're generalizing, because if you look at the powers that be, the majority of them, I don't think, are my age and come from my place. I think that nostalgic brain that I'm talking about develops as we get older. You ask a 20-year-old, hey, look at this old building. Okay, where's the beer? Which is great because that's the way I was. But I think as we get older, that part of our brain, as I look at it sociologically, and if you look at some of the theoretical perspectives of the way we develop, there was a protege of Freud whose name was Erikson, and he said really every decade we change a little bit. And the theory was that at some point we stop looking at where we're going and we start reflecting on where we've been. And that's typically around middle age, 50 years old, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, and that part of our brain kicks in. And I think that's why when I put some of this stuff on Facebook, oh my gosh. And really that's, again, it's conversation starters, and that's the part that I love. I just did one. It might be in one of these files here, but I did one where it was a picture of an ROTC class at Plant High School. And this guy's got this 5-foot training rifle that he's showing to a bunch of these cadets, and they're all just looking at him. And so I found that in the Gandhi collection, and I put that online on the Plant High School Facebook page, and people just blew up. I remember that class. I remember that instructor. Gosh, I wonder what happened with those guys. Can anyone identify it? And that's the kind of thing we get reconnected to where we've been. And that's the thrill for me, for people to be able to see where they were, to have those memories, because it gets covered up with all the crap we're in every day. And to be able to take some of those layers off and to be able to reminisce and stuff is just so much fun.
Some of those Facebook pages you're involved in are really cool. I think there's like a Tampa history one.
There is.
That has 70,000 followers or something crazy.
Yeah.
And every photo that's posted, oh my God, the stories. I grew up on this street.
Exactly.
And we used to go to this person's house or whatever it may be. I mean, like hundreds of comments.
But I'm able to look at the demographics on the old Tampa Photo Facebook page and see. And the majority of them are 50 and older. There are some.
But here's the thing. So do you think the young people in, some of these European cities, do they look at those old institutions and maybe think the opposite? Like, hey, these are old relics of the past. We need to get new and fresh ideas.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Could be. Again, how connected are they? Is their family connected to it? Um, Really, I think it's probably country relevant.
Yeah.
How much do they invest in history and educating the people that are there? And I do think it's also that human process.
One of the things I've been exploring over the last couple months is, what makes a place, right? And I think Florida, for many different reasons, is becoming this like homogenous group of
Mm,
cities that sort of all feel the same. And all of these photos, these institutions, these buildings sort of represent something uniquely Tampa.
right.
And over the, 100 something years, we lose more and more and more and more. And
Yeah.
we're left with less than we started. At the same time, there's a lot of people moving here that are not from here. You mentioned like, hey, maybe someone like me, for example, might care about this little building on 8th Avenue because it was my grandfather's, hardware store,
Right.
right? But if you're coming here from a different place, that's not necessarily going to be at the forefront of your mind.
I think that's probably true. And so people that are connected to Tampa are going to be more connected to these photos. But if you look at it more from a practical or a historical perspective, as I look through history, Ybor City, the Centro Espanol Club was there, and 16th Street used to run right beside it. And I want to say Mayor Nucio in the 50s said, because Ybor was falling apart, it was post war, people were moving to the suburbs, Ybor was losing all of its commercial uh, tenants as well as people just walking around. And I think it was Nucio that said, we need to make a place for people to come. So they opened, it was the Paseo de Ybor or something. They closed off 16th Avenue and they just made a concrete park out of it. And the idea was people will come because we'll bring tour buses here and that kind of thing, and it'll just really be the place to go. And it wasn't. They put a fountain down there and it was okay for a little while, but it just didn't make it happen. You cannot recreate what Ybor City was.
Mm.
Then in 2000, and I think your grandfather was
Well,
involved.
David, can you grab that newspaper? It's sitting on the table. It's next to that coffee cup. You'll be able to see it. It's in the stack of photos. Because it's funny you bring that up. I want to read this to you real quick. This article, so this is a Tribune, Tampa Tribune, September 1960.
Okay.
There's a city affairs section. Vernon Bradford, Tribune staff writer. Ybor City redevelopment plan. It looks as though the city.
How many times have you heard that?
Yeah, I know. Well, this is 1960. I
Right.
think you just mentioned
Just keep trying.
50s,
Keep
right?
trying.
And then, of course, today.
Yep.
It says Ybor City redevelopment plan. It looks as though the city is finally
Yep.
reaching the point where it planned redevelopment and preservation of the Latin atmosphere of Ybor City will become a reality. The Greater Tampa Chamber of Commerce, Tampa Urban Renewal Agency, and other groups are getting behind the program strongly. Yellowed newspaper clippings of years back show that such a program is nothing new to the community
Yep.
and business leaders of Ybor City. They have been struggling through the years for preservation of the Latin atmosphere.
Right.
Dick Greco, civic leader whose hardware store has stood for years at 8th Avenue and 15th, was recalling recently some of the hard work the Ybor City Chamber of Commerce and businessman had put into the project.
Right.
That was my great-grandfather.
I
And
love
again,
it.
1960, and it talks about yellowed newspaper clippings, to tell that, we've been on this road for a long time.
And so what happened after that? And again, I think your grandfather was involved in Central Ybor, that we're going to build this place. People aren't coming to just hang out. So we're going to build a place that's got shopping, because brand names, national brands came in, and a place where people can go and hang out, and it will be sort of the core. Just this one block or 2 blocks, because they put the movie theater there.
This was early 2000s.
Early 2000s, right. And so they did. And ultimately, again, it was a failure as far as recreating that, because you cannot bring it back. I also think of the Franklin Street, where people vacated downtown because they all moved to the suburbs. How are we going to do this? And I think your grandfather was involved in that as well, as turning it into a pedestrian mall, which was good thinking. But if there's no restaurants, if there's no place to live, people went downtown to work and then they went home. So during the lunch, you could see that there were some people on the Franklin Street Mall. But after that, and I guess my takeaway, because we have photographs of all of that, is if we look at it from a global perspective, that look at what's happening in Ybor now with Daryl Shaw. It needs a shapeshifter in there. It needs to change the entire thing. There is no recreating, I don't think, the Latin Quarter. You can honor it, like we saw with the Scazzari building. You can honor it and you can keep some of it, but you need to bring a whole new way of being. Same thing's happening in downtown. Franklin Street will never be the retail mecca that it was, but look at all the building that's going on down there. So hopefully part of what these photographs can do is show us where we were, maybe some of the mistakes we made, and eventually what it will take to retool the city into where we're going. Because I certainly don't criticize developers at all. I just think that the honor of the old structure needs to be there, and sometimes it is and sometimes it's not.
Do you think that, well, look, it's a spectrum, right? Maybe on one end of the spectrum is, the peak in the 1920s with
Yeah.
50 miles of streetcar network and retail on Franklin Street and
Right.
Ybor in its heyday. And then maybe today, post urban renewal, where it's all been gutted out. Certainly, it's better now than it's been in the last 15 or so years.
Yes.
Our urban core.
Yes.
But there's a culture shift. That's what's different too, right? It's like when I was growing up, it was all about living in a gated community. I mean, and certainly before that, like in the 80s and even after, post World War II, people
Right.
wanted that white picket fence and,
Right.
urban decay
Yep.
occurred through the mid-century. But it seems like today, more and more younger people and younger generations want to live in a place that feels different. It's not just like a gated community going to the Costco and all that. And this is, I think, an American thing. I think particularly in America, this style of living has gone so far into this car-centric suburbanization way of life that it's eroded something inside of us we can't really put our finger on, but we crave some of the stuff we've seen today, some of these old photos, or at least a modern version of that
What do you get in living in an urban core?
community.
That's exactly right. I'm going to walk down to the shop, and I'll see all my friends. And I think that is a big missing piece in the suburbs. Not that it's not there, but if you think about, because I've seen photos, and you probably have too, of old Ybor City. And cigar workers and politicians and everybody's walking the streets and smoking cigars and having a cafe con leche. And it's a sense of community. And I think we lose that in the gated communities to some degree, and not knocking them. But there is an appeal. The difficulty I think we're seeing now is the crazy expense of living in the urban core in some of these high rises where prices start at $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And yet developers aren't stupid. So they have some idea that it's going to succeed. And it'll be interesting to watch the social changes that happen over the next few years because it is shifting.
It is definitely shifting, and it's beautiful to see our downtown sort of come back alive.
Yes.
And much more people living there. And even in Ybor City, it's like I think Ybor's in this weird transition spot. In some ways it's more exciting than ever because there's all this change happening and there's infrastructure improvements and there's some positivity. On the other hand, some of those businesses that have been there for a long time are closing or leaving, and it's in this middle ground.
Right.
Certainly.
Right.
I think the good news in Ybor in particular is everyone feels like they have this stake and people really, really care about it. Like that's a great foundational place to start. It's like all these eras of people, whether your story in Ybor started with the immigration or if your family owned a business there or if you've worked there in the last couple decades or if it meant a lot to you with your friends going out and having a good time. Like
Right.
everyone has a piece of this district that it seems right now are really fighting to hold on to. But I think that's a good thing.
As long as people are invested and there's some flexibility, I think it's a good thing as well. If you need to talk with the stakeholders. Look what Tom DeGeorge is doing related to music venues and his fight. And, unfortunately his place closed. But to have that kind of voice, I said it earlier, to honor what has been there. We can't replicate it, but we can certainly keep bits and pieces of it, check with the stakeholders. And, Daryl Shaw, the Gasworks project is sort of at one end between downtown and Ybor. And to integrate all of that in there, I think is really important. But you mentioned it. The stakeholders are important because it all matters.
It all matters, definitely. And it also seems like the stuff Daryl is doing speaks to that old heritage of paying attention to those small details. Like when you look at those new buildings going up, they're not your typical just like cardboard boxes, right?
Right.
That they produce this really beautiful facades with authentic materials. Like Casa Gomez and Casa Marti was made with full brick.
Right.
Like that's the same way they built it over 100 years ago. That building will be here for another 100 years.
David, can you go back to that slide? Let's talk about Daryl for a second. And by the way, I think you probably know this. No, go
What a photo
to the
that was,
stories.
though, of Channel
And
Side. We'll
that's
talk
something.
about that later.
Okay,
But
cool. Yeah, go.
it would be, you flashed through it,
Go
David. It
go
was the
back.
one that fell with the old marquee. Go
There.
forward, David. Yeah.
And back one more. So, greatest story in the world because Daryl tells it better than anyone can. When he was looking to get into commercial real estate back in the 80s, he decided to start an EBOR and he bought this building, the Budget Health Beauty Aids building. I hadn't seen a photograph of it. I heard him tell the story, and then I'm going through the Gandhi collection and I came across this photo. I'm like, oh my gosh, there it is. So this is the building that he bought, and the story that he tells is that he and his family were up on that balcony in the 80s to watch the Gasparilla Night Parade. They came down, they went home, and a week later he gets a phone call in the middle of the night. Do you own this building? He says, yes. He says, well, you better come down here because it just fell into the street. And sure enough, he went down there and the whole building had toppled. They went in with an inspector the next day, and the inspector took a pencil and he could push through the brick wall. He says, this thing's got to go. So that was Daryl Shaw's initial foray into commercial real estate. And go to the next photo, and you'll recognize this. And here's what it looks like now.
Yeah.
But if you look down a couple of buildings, that Crest building and the one next to it, he bought those again and rehabbed the whole thing, did a beautiful job, started the art studios in the Crest building. And that was really sort of the introduction of Daryl Shaw is back. And now he's done all this other wonderful stuff. But that's the honor that I'm talking about. There was a fire station on 8th, I think, that was kind of falling apart. Easily torn down. They didn't do that. He went in and shored it up, and now it's Sky Puppy Brewery. Beautiful building with a lot of extra effort and a lot of money, but it's that kind of spirit, it's that kind of honor, I think. It's still modern. They have a brewery in there now, but we can still reference the past and we can still walk up and touch it. And I think that's the really cool stuff.
Well, you brought up something. I don't think you used the word like champion, but you brought up, a word for an individual that could spearhead, particular things. Like you said, eBoard needed like a, whatever that person may be.
I call it shape-shifting. But
Shape-shifting.
yeah, because we're not just going to take this block. We're going to have a global vision of what's going to happen. And we are going to check with the stakeholders, and we're going to go from there. Well, look at Vinnick.
Right.
Look at strategic partners.
Well, even go way back though, like go back to the late 1800s when Henry Plant had the vision to bring the railroad down on this coast of Florida
Yep.
and built the Tampa Bay Hotel.
Right.
The beautiful Moorish architecture, which is just
Beautiful.
an unbelievable building. If people haven't been on those grounds and seen it up close and then done the little museum they have on that ground floor on, I think, the south side, people need to check that out. Just absolutely amazing. One of the first hotels in Florida that was electrically lit, right? If I'm not butchering that, or had air conditioning. There was something really, really progressive and forward thinking at the time. But even back to that era, like, if you think it's hard today to do real estate development, imagine back then when you're bringing a railroad down through a swampy area on a coast where Fort Brooke was. There wasn't a whole lot going on.
And convincing people how cool it's going to be there.
Right.
Because when they get here and there's mosquitoes everywhere, and how do you make them comfortable? But that was just sort of the jam of the day. That
Well, the way they sold it, it was like this Southern sportsman's like outdoorsy
right,
adventure
right,
hotel paradise. If you look at some of the old curriculum they had with the excursions, it was like, they had like alligators in this almost like a zoo,
yep,
kind of area.
yep,
You could go on book fishing charters, some of the best fishing in the world in Tampa Bay in the
right,
late 1800s. So you imagine like a couple coming down from New York on a train coming to the Tampa Bay Hotel in like 1895, going on a fishing excursion, but think about that. That's one person spearheading an effort with a vision, and isn't that the story of our country? These particular people, men and women, visionaries that spearhead movements that gather people around them, and they change the world and they change the future.
yeah.
And those people still exist today. It just looks a little bit different.
And look at the mass of it. A major hotel on the banks of the Hillsborough River back then was a really big deal. But we already talked about it. Look at how many times they attempted to reestablish Ybor City and bring it back to its glory. And I've already said it, there's no doing that. But you take this global approach of you mix the old with the new, and you make it attractive, and you sell it. It's just a completely different way of doing things, I think. And like I said, Jeff Vinnick downtown, what he's done, what Water Street, and just fantastic.
There's something special if you go, if you visit like, I don't know, a small town in Italy or something like that, or, if anyone's been fortunate enough to travel around the world, there's little villages you can find that have, seem to be untouched by
Yeah.
any growth and development. Like actually the little town where my family came from, Santo Stefano Quisquina, I think it's called, in Sicily. I actually went with my mom. And so my dad's side of the family is from there. My mom's side is from Cefalù, Sicily. And we visited both. Now, Cefalù has some growth and it's bigger. It's a coastal village. But Santo Stefano, oh my God, it's in the mountains of Sicily on sort of a bluff. It looks like nothing's been built there for 500 years.
Yeah.
Like it is insanely old. I don't even know if you could look up a picture of it, David, but like you kind of go there and you realize, oh, I understand why so many families left. I think there were some economic and war issues during that era in the late 1800s. There was a lot of immigration out of Italy and Sicily, and then as well as Spain, right? The Spanish Civil War, I think at that time. So there were these waves of immigration to America, and these people came here for a better life. But when you go to these old towns, oh my God, and you see the streets. When we were there, they happened to have a cheese festival.
Wow.
And so my mom, I was walking through the crowd, I was ahead of her, and she took a picture of me. Sicilians are short little people, and I'm like 2 foot taller than anybody. I look exactly like them, except I'm just taller than them. I'm 6'2". It was a funny picture. But the men, the older gentlemen that would sit along the sides with their canes, and they would sit there and just tell stories, and you could see them interacting with one another. And everything was you could tell that this was a community. Like this was not a people that sit and order on Uber Eats and Amazon. Like this was a collective community. And so it made me realize like, oh, it's no wonder why Ybor looked the way it did when those Spaniards and Cubans and Italians and Sicilians, and when all these immigrants from all those places came to Ybor, they basically replicated that community
Right.
in Tampa.
Right.
And these institutions and this architecture kind of spoke to that. And I think maybe because of the, all of history and the future generations of people that have heard those stories from their families, it's like, I don't know, again, I read that article from 1960. It's like we have this craving to try to bring that back. But maybe you're right. Maybe it can never be brought back in the exact fashion, not only because of the way people live today, but the people that built it came
Yeah.
here on steamships
Right.
with nothing, for a better life. Like that fact alone probably would produce a different development pattern. There's all those little fine details that work into it.
But again, if you dig in from a psychological standpoint, is there a core of us that wants that kind of connection and it's missing? And will the youth of today find that at some level as they kind of come back together in downtown and other urban areas? And will that be appreciated and honored again? Because I think it's in there. I think it's gotten covered over. I don't know if it'll come out again, but there is that way of functioning that we have. We need to be connected to others. We are social animals. We are some weird ass social animals, I'm telling you from a clinical standpoint, but we need that connection with other people. And if we can find that in our neighbors and our friends in a positive way, I think it'll be spectacular. I don't know if it'll happen given the divisive ways we are these days, I guess.
Well, you're alive and do what you do in sort of a weird timeline. I mean, with all the new technology today, and what's interesting is in some ways it's made us closer than ever. Like the way we communicate, FaceTime across the world and messaging each other. We're closer than ever in terms of maybe communication, but we're also so much further apart in the way we live.
I think one of the concerns for clinicians, for the younger generations, this is how they relate. This is how they see the world. And this kind of situation, the majority of them are not comfortable with. The eye to eye, the close proximity to another person. How do they get socialized to that? And they are paying attention to that now, where they're taking away the electronic devices and really encouraging younger kids to learn how to play and to learn that there are a-holes in the world. How do you deal with that? And I don't think you get a lot of that on electronics, but I think that's a missing piece, and it's created some closeness because I can see you, like you said, from the other side of the world, but I can't feel you. What's it like to be with other people? And I don't know where all that's going to land. It's certainly been an interesting sociological change.
Well, you talked about these photos, right? And how these photos produce something inside of you. And I was saying like warmth or something like that. How much research, or have you done a paper or any sort of blog on your work as it relates to human psychology and the feeling it gives people?
I have not.
That's
people have asked me before, what is it about all of this? And what you've heard today is a good part of it, but I've not really put it down on paper anywhere. It's an interesting
It is
perspective.
interesting. Very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Very interesting because it's expressed in physical form, meaning like even look at City Hall, like the perfect example, really. You have those two municipal buildings on the same block, right, where old City Hall is downtown. And you have the one that was built in the early 1920s, and it's this amazingly intricate building. David, you could even I bet you have a City Hall page on here.
Let's go to downtown.
Yeah, downtown. It's this amazingly intricate building with a clock tower at the top, and it's multiple tiered. It looks like a frickin' wedding cake. I mean, our City Hall right there. It's beautiful. And it even has these, they're not gargoyles, obviously, but whatever those faces are.
Right.
I mean, really, really cool. Like whoever, I'm sure you have the architect in here.
I think it was in 1915. It was, and he was a known architect.
Yeah, he was.
Built several buildings.
And his name is like in the back of my mind.
Right.
But anyway, going back to like the sort of the human like connection and psychology behind it, it's like even these buildings express maybe our disconnect or a shift in culture from one another. And the picture on the right is a perfect example, right? That's an era, that old City Hall, of when people were directly connected way before the internet, way before all of that, people meeting each other face to face daily on the street for all goods and services.
Right.
And the building is so intricate. Every piece of it has a detail. And then you look at the office tower, which I believe was built in the late 80s, right? Yep. The office boom, the cubicle,
right,
the fax machine, you know, and all that. And it's just glass, right? There's almost no detail.
And look at the Brutalist building back behind it because that's part of
Yeah,
the
that's what I was going to bring up on the same block, right?
man. Yeah,
There's not much brutalist in Tampa, but that's
that's one
I
of
guess one of the best or worst examples, depending on how you look at it. That
yeah,
thing is sure is ugly, right?
yeah,
But it, you know, it's oddly historic, right? Brutalist has sort of become like this historic, kind of cool, unique
yeah.
era of architecture.
It is definitely a style. If it's something you like, then have at it, I guess.
So City Hall was erected in 1915 for $235,000. In 2017, it underwent a $16 million facelift and update. Isn't that amazing? The other thing too we were talking about was maybe some of the decisions that humans make or government makes, and I was talking about how choosing to, like, Americans choose to tear down an old building for a new, et cetera. And some of those intrinsic values in America are lost sometimes.
Yeah.
The other thing was across from City Hall, there's this block that the city owns. And I think it was purchased for like under $3 million. It's where the Tampa police headquarters is. The city wanted to sell that block in order to build
Talking about the old Marine Bank building?
uh,
That's where the
Big
police.
Blue.
Yeah.
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 Which, do you have pictures of that?
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Um, you know, I probably made a dead argument, but I was making an argument of like, look, there's this really intrinsic, amazing value that the city and the people of the city would own an entire city block that could be redeveloped for a multitude of public reasons. They wanted to sell it to a developer and do like another condo project or something else there.
Marine
Bank
Bank.
building. Yeah. Yeah, but again, like my point is the argument I was making is so difficult to make because I need an economic reason. I need this reason. I need that reason. I don't have that. The only thing I have is it's valuable intrinsically for the people of a city to own an entire block across from City Hall. You know, maybe you build a new city center, maybe you build a new police headquarters, but the city, the people of the city with its tax money bought that for under $3 million 30 years ago. What is it worth today? 30, 40 or more million, and
But
what
from
is
a
it, what
from
is
a
it worth in 50 years from now, right?
business
It's
perspective,
priceless.
as I look around the city and what the city owns, and I'm not one of these guys to jump on my high horse, but it's just an observation when I look at some of the assets that this city owns and the poor care that they take of it. Taking Sulphur Springs, for example, that pool
Sure.
that's been closed now for several years. Several assets here that we don't have the money or we don't have the time and effort to put into them, Marine Bank building included. I mean, I've got photos of that when it was first built, and the inside, it was beautiful and colorful and all of that, and I'm sure it doesn't look like that anymore. But so we own it, but now we have to have the upkeep and pay for the maintenance on it and all of that. I don't know if it's worth it. It's cool that we own a city block. Directly across the street from that is, again, one of the most controversial things that has happened as far as preservation is concerned at the Likes Gaslight Park. That's where the First National Bank and Likes Gas Company was located. And my understanding is back in the day, they wanted to tear those down. And they went to the city, and the city said, nope, no way, because we're going to preserve those buildings because they were old. And this big legal fight ensued. The city lost. Likes was able to tear down both of those buildings, and then they sued the city for over $1 million for legal expenses. And this is back in 70s, 80s, which then just quelled any sort of wish to go after preservation anymore because we can't afford it as a city. We don't have the things in place for the big stuff. We certainly have a preservation board, and they do some fantastic work. But where do you draw the line? And money talks.
Yeah. Money does talk, and money beats any and every argument. Like the argument I'm making, maybe, if we didn't build, for example, Hannah City Center, like maybe that could have been built on that block. But now think about the revenue we could generate as a city if you sold that block for $40 million and built a condo on it. Think about all the property tax we could generate to fix Sulphur Springs Pool and all this sort of stuff.
Do you think the
My
city thinks like that?
The way I just described,
Yeah.
I think our whole country thinks like that. I think our whole country and our culture thinks about any and every opportunity to scrape pennies off the table. That's the decision we make. I'm not saying that that's good or bad. That's my observation
Yeah.
and kind of how we operate. But I also think that there's certain guardrails. If that's the argument always, oh, just sell it to a developer and build a condo. Well, why do we own anything then, right? It's like just sell everything to a developer and build condos everywhere, and then you could generate all the tax money you'd ever need, right? It's like at some point there's lines we have to draw.
But can you answer your own question? Why does the city own property? What does it do for the city? No tax base in it, not generating any revenue. And clearly, it's a nice asset to have on the books. Why does the city own property? What's your opinion?
I think that real estate's really interesting. It's one of the only things as we move into this digital world through AI and all this other stuff. It's one of the only things that's real.
You
It's
can
real
put your
estate,
hands
right? It's
on.
real property.
Yeah.
And the collective body of people, right? The people of this city, using that block, for example, owning an entire block next to City Hall. I don't even know if there's a dollar amount you could put on it. I would actually argue it's priceless for the people of a city to own that. What it can be used for is up to debate. But putting aside the fact that we could sell it and just saying we own this entire block, I don't know. I think that's an argument to be made a million different ways. Can you use it for an additional green space or a park? Could you, Tampa Police Headquarters is terrible. They probably need a new HQ.
Yep.
Since we already own the dirt, can you build a new headquarters there? Maybe it could house multiple city offices. There's never going to be a good enough and compelling economic argument that the city, which pays no taxes on its own property, should own property.
Right.
Other than this intrinsic value I'm sort of like trying to get at here. I mean, I'm actually excited you're on here to talk about this because
But it sounds like, by golly, we have value because we own real estate. And I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying the city shouldn't own real estate. I just don't know the value of it. Except, we could sell it for a bunch and hopefully make a profit on it. Before that building was built, that was the site of the old courthouse, which
exactly
stopped. It sat empty for years. They tried to auction it twice, and I don't think it's sold. And finally, someone bought it, and they built the Marine Bank. And I put that up on my page. I think it was on Facebook, and people have said this about that building and several others. Well, why didn't they do something? Like, well, who is they? Because they ought to be preserving all of these buildings. And I think it's a misconception of the general public of the they is us. If we want to preserve something, we got to come up with the money, we got to buy it, and then do whatever. But the city isn't in the habit of buying buildings and then preserving them. And so that's another piece of it, of this misconception about old buildings and who is supposed to take care of them. And this one is included. Who is, obviously we have to pay the bill for maintenance. Would it be your thought that it comes down and something else happens with it? Is that what you think should happen?
This police headquarters
Yeah.
building? Certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the building is dated and it has probably asbestos and a bunch of horrible, I think every piece of it doesn't make sense for the Tampa police. Everyone I've talked to over there says it's terrible.
Yep.
So do you gut it? Do you renovate the whole thing? Do you take it down and build a new tower there? Do you sell that portion to a developer and keep the other side, which is a parking garage? Do you get more creative about what you do with it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that certain things are hard to explain other than their intrinsic value and what they mean to the history or a community or a culture. And those are the things that should probably be protected by government, because everything else in America gets raked over for profit. And that's fine. That's okay. There's not an inherent evil associated with that. I think it's provided this country with a million different opportunities for millions of people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, isn't there a line? Isn't there a line of protection and preservation? David, if you can pull up that old building, the old courthouse that you brought up that used to be on this site, people don't know that. I mean, the logo of
I don't know
Hillsborough
that I've
County.
got that, David. I don't know that that's in here.
Oh my gosh, I'm shocked you don't have that one, because
I
what a beautiful building that was.
The one I saw, and now I can do it since I'm doing aerials, but was a little bit higher, and I couldn't rephotograph it yet.
Just type in Google image old Hillsborough County Courthouse.
Yeah, that'll come up.
There's a few old ones, I guess,
Yep.
but it'll pop up. But it was the same architect that designed the Tampa Bay Hotel.
Okay.
And so it was made to look like that Moorish. Now, come on.
That's it.
Look at that. So click that, David. That's a great picture. Yeah, that one's fine. Or even like the top left, David, with Sacred Heart in the background. Like when I look at that, or I look at this one here, David, with the City Hall in the background. When I look at that, I know I'm in Tampa. I'm in a particularly unique place.
Right.
And these are government buildings.
Right.
I'm not, again, like I'm not dying on these hills. I'm just trying to express that there's something that we're sort of losing here, and maybe we don't exactly know what that thing is. And of all these shows I've done, it's difficult to articulate. I don't have an argument I could make in front of like a court. You know what I mean? I don't have an economic argument that
Apparently nobody does.
apparently nobody does, right? We see all these buildings come down.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier about this particular courthouse, it sounds like they tried to save it, auctioning it off, trying to find someone who would preserve
Somebody,
it.
please help.
There's great example. Now this is where the whole thing changes. There's great examples of old buildings that people today have taken on to maybe change the use of or retrofit into a new form, but preserve the history of it.
Yes.
The building in Ybor City was a great example.
Yes.
Another fantastic example, David, if you look up La Meridian, the federal courthouse,
Yep.
Beautiful old building they turned into a hotel.
Right.
That's the path forward. The path forward is finding creative and ambitious people that care enough and have enough capital to put into these things to make them new again, but keep the historical relevancy and look and feel, but maybe use them in a different way.
Well, look at the University of
courthouse-
Tampa.
Perfect example.
Right.
Or the courthouse is a great example.
Yep.
That federal courthouse, that's not nearly big enough for our needs.
Right.
The new federal building is like 5 times the size.
Yes.
But again, right, that doesn't mean you tear down the old courthouse, in my opinion. I think those things are to be preserved. Now look at this. I mean, look at this beautiful building that they didn't need anymore. Could have absolutely been torn down, but it was changed into a hotel. I think there's opportunities out there for historical buildings to be made new again, maybe through a different use.
Until when, though? Because when you start looking at codes and you start looking at scale, with all these high rises going into downtown, I'm not advocating for tearing down the La Meridian, but do you build 20, 40-story high rises and then in the middle of it you have this little courthouse, which is cool with me, but is that practical when you're looking at a true developing, enlarging city?
I would argue it is, because
Okay.
I think it gives us a unique identity.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want is to feel like Tampa has just become like Orlando or
Skyscraper.
Miami or just you name it. Who cares? Florida City.
Right.
I think if we did have that historic core, for example, all these buildings we discussed today downtown, let's say they were all still standing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you keep those and you'd have skyscrapers, on the outskirts or whatever, however it would look.
Right.
But I do think there's something uniquely special about that. And I've traveling a lot around the state, you sort of realize that with the rules of the state government, this homogenization of FDOT and codes and yada yada, it's like everywhere looks the same. Like a little community out in East Hillsborough County, you can go to the suburbs in Orlando, it's literally the exact same thing, sometimes with the same name.
Right.
And so the only place that really makes us unique is our story and our history. And the people are dead and gone. and the institutions, the Tampa Tribune doesn't even exist anymore, right? Well, what's left? The buildings are left. That architecture is left. And so I think because of that, it's worth saving. And even if it costs a little more time and a little more money, and I can't give you a good argument that makes economic sense, I still think it's worth doing.
Listen, I'm on your program. I mean, I believe in everything you're saying. It's convincing the others. It's the people who are buying the buildings and tearing them down or not. And I think with efforts like yours and the people around us, and again, I keep referring to Daryl Shaw, but he has taken on a huge project, but he's also honored the past of what was there. And if we can get more Daryl Shaws in here, or just people buying individual buildings like the Scazzari building, perfect. It's just what we need to be doing, I think.
So, yeah, these arguments, look, we learn as we move forward. And
Right.
I think we hone our skills and we get better and better. And maybe today I'm only articulating it in a, I don't know, 5 out of 10 way. Hopefully one day I can get better. But there was, I'm on the Charter Review Commission with the city, and we were talking about, should particular department heads, namely the city clerk, be, required to live within the city of Tampa.
Yeah.
And every argument tells you, you have a larger pool of talent.
Right.
You can allow your employees and department heads to live in like a different county, right? But work here, meaning they can have, there's more affordable housing in suburban areas. There's every economic and every single argument you could make that would tell you, hey, it's a good idea that it doesn't matter where people live.
Yep.
I made the intrinsic argument. I was like, look, this city is fighting for an identity. We talk about it all the time. And one of the best ways we can hold on to, maintain, and even improve maybe our culture and our identity is if the people that work in this city live in the city. And so the park and rec director, what is he or she doing on a Saturday? Taking their kids to the city park, right? Police chief, they're walking on their own streets, et cetera. And I said, there's just something intrinsic about this, and I just don't support any other position. And it went around the room, and we ended up siding with what I was advocating for, which was awesome. But I thought, and it only passed by like one vote. And it was something small. It was like, I think it was only related to the city clerk's office. But the conversation was more broad about that. And I was thinking to myself, like, dude, this is going to be hard for you. Like you have a lot of these arguments against you. It's like economically speaking, hey, you want to hire the best people. There's a lot, you're going to have a larger pool if you're looking in a $4 million metropolitan or 4 million, population metropolitan area rather than the city of Tampa, which has 400,000 people, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And I was thinking, this is going to be a hard road.
It's going to come back to bite
ahead
you.
of me. But I still think it's worth fighting for, and I'll just get better at how I figure out these arguments, because I think it's worth it. And I think at the end of it all, in a few decades, we can look back and hopefully preserve some of the stuff so that our children and grandchildren can see it too and experience it for themselves.
Right. Let's talk about where we're going. Oh, I love this.
What a photo.
So, as I've been going through the Gandy collection, he did a lot of aerials. And I'd say probably a year ago or so, I just wanted to find a pilot that would fly me around so I could retake. It's going to be super expensive, but so worth it for me. Couldn't find one. Could not find a pilot anywhere that could do this and had the right aircraft. So I went and got my drone pilot's license so that I could get up, not as high as some of these, but at least I could get some of the aerial views. And I started going back through the Gandy collection and looking at the aerials. And as you see, this is Channel Side and what it used to look like with all of the warehouses and so on. If we go to the next photo, here's what it looks like now. So just you can see the crosstown and get a reference of size there, because I'm not up quite as high. I can't go as high as an airplane with a drone. We can still get a reference of Back in the back, you can see where the aquarium is. In the first photo, the aquarium had just been built. So I think this is in the late 1990s. The what is now Benchmark, you can see the foundation for that being poured. But what a difference in a matter of 20 years.
Go back to that original photo, David. So this is what, like
late 1990s.
Late 1990s.
Right.
Oh, the Ice Palace isn't even built.
Right. That's
Convention
the
Center.
foundation.
Right. It's almost hard. Like if you showed, like David, for example, did you recognize this immediately? David moved here, what, 2 years ago?
I mean, yeah, but I kept looking through the old
Right.
stuff. So if I didn't know, I wouldn't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know how you would.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like a lot of people would look at this and be like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Yep.
I mean, even look at the railroad tracks, which were removed.
Right.
Meridian Fields, which they just did Gasparilla Music Festival there.
Right.
It's so crazy and hard to imagine. Water Street. Look at that. Harbor Island, barely built out. It's amazing.
And then go to the next.
You know, the other thing too, like go back one, David, sorry. The other thing too is who's to say what's important and what's not?
Mm-hmm.
You know, this area has been completely changed. Was this not important just because it was industrial? Like there's families in there that, you know, their parents had businesses in here and maybe this was very special to them.
Right.
You know, there's generalizing is only good for conversation. Like, and us doing a podcast, we have to generalize. But if you really want to know the consensus of a people, you can't generalize. There's so many different opinions everywhere.
But then who do you listen to?
It's a really good question.
Went down there and found, you know, Billy Bob's family who owned the store.
Right.
And he says, I don't want you to tear this down.
Exactly.
And yet you have this massive influx of money and power. Who do you listen to? I don't think it's going to be Billy Bob.
I think that's an extremely hard question to answer because isn't the argument the exact same I was making about maybe, you know, one of these other older buildings? Why would my argument be different from another family who's, you know, they had this auto body shop over here and this was their grandfather's and all of that? Isn't that the exact same argument?
Isn't that the course of time? And, you know, if we look back, Ybor City, for example, where the Tampa Bay Brewery is, it's now a law firm. That was Ybor's first brewery, and they built it on top of Government Spring, which was the spring for not only the indigenous people, but also for Fort Brooke. And so government went in there and said, we're taking this, not really paying attention to the people who used it, and I'm including, again, the natives who were here. And so that has been sort of the cycle, that the power goes in and takes it. And listen, it's a beautiful building. And if it was ever torn down, people would lament the idea that it was gone. But there were people there before that happened, and we took it from them. And again, I don't want to get all political about it. I just, from a sociological standpoint, when you look at how we have taken property and sort of turned it into what it is, the current value of it and the current ideas, I don't think that's going to change. So Billy Bob's body shop, while maybe valuable to his family, and it's a shame that it might be torn down. Hopefully he gets paid for it. But it is moving on, and there's just no stopping that kind of progress, I don't think. Sometimes, sadly.
That's the thing, right, is like all of these properties, most of them at least, I'm sure an extremely small percentage were taken by the government through eminent domain or other means, et cetera.
Right.
But most of this stuff is a willful contract with both parties, right?
One would hope.
You know, one would hope. People being compensated and a greater vision being brought to life.
Right.
And things get weird when it's not that way. And there's certainly stories of that.
Go to the next photo, David. I just want to look. See, there's still some.
And you can see the Perry paint building.
Yes, you can. And this building has been there for a long time. I think someone owns it, and they're going to sell it for millions of dollars, but that's got some historical value. That's in my book as well. But so there's still some of the small stuff left, and yet there's progress.
Well, that's the other thing too, right? As things densify in our downtown and the urban core area, the property value goes up.
Right.
And so if you own that auto body shop
Right.
and maybe when you bought it, it was 500,000 and now it's worth 20 million
Yep.
because it's entitled to build a skyscraper on top.
Right.
Can you really blame the family for taking that check?
Absolutely
And
not.
absolutely not. Right. So,
And it's their prerogative.
and there's some stories of that. Like the city just bought, I don't know if you have an aerial, David, of Next, Ybor Harbor, great shot as that grows and develops.
Go back to that.
But there's a you know, a body shop or J.H. Williams Oil Company that
Yep.
was over there,
Right.
and
Amazon hose and rubber was over there.
all that, and then the banana docks,
Banana-
that's all getting filled in to be a
Right.
new cruise port.
Right.
It's a story of life, is
Yep.
change and growth and development, right? And then this will be the next new dramatic photo.
Right.
I mean, Ybor Harbor, which just got approval for some CRA funding for the infrastructure.
And so part of what I want to do just moving forward is, keeping my thumb on the pulse of what's happening and shoot it before it happens so that it is historical and I can go back and retake this photo in, 10 years, or someone can, and we can see the growth and what has happened in Tampa then too, because that's a really cool shot. And yeah, it's up and coming.
So let me ask you, you've lived in Tampa for a long, long time.
Long time.
And I think you mentioned when we started the show about that view from Davis Islands.
Yeah.
Early 60s, did you
Early
say?
60s.
Early 60s.
Mid 60s.
When you look at these photos of all the change, are you saddened or are you inspired by all the growth?
I'm not saddened. I'm not saddened for the most part. When I see a very historical building, tar furniture, for example, it hurts. I mean, I watched them tear it down, and I think I wrote in the blog that it was like watching, a family member get an autopsy, because I can see the old stuff falling and them crushing the side of this building and old office chairs falling out. So that's tough to watch, but yeah, I'm just not anti-progress. I mean, when I look at a photo like that, I just think it's awesome. Go ahead and go to the next, David.
That one.
So that's Tampa General. I'm not sure what the date is on that, but this is a Burger photo. So they did take some aerials, and you can see downtown and the height of the building, and then go to the next. And here's what it looks like now. You can see the old shape and really what's grown up around it, and look at that downtown and how it's changed.
It's amazing too. You can actually see the building. So I think
That's it.
the original, go to the black and white, David. I believe the original was 1920s.
That sounds right.
Right, because
that's
Davis
when-
Islands was developed in
Exactly.
the 20s.
Right.
That municipal hospital.
Right.
And then go forward, David, you can see that building still stands,
Right.
which really is amazing
Amazing.
if you think about that. But look at the annexes
Yep.
and the architecture through the eras, right? Like
Yep.
that first annex on the front,
Right.
clearly mid-century.
Yep.
And then some stuff you could tell like 1970s maybe.
Probably.
And then you've got, this has got to be from the 2000s.
Yep.
And then on the front, 2020s, right? That glass Alfonso architect, that really beautiful wave design, which I actually think it needed because Tampa General has been added onto over 100 years. And so it looks so mismatched on our beautiful waterfront.
Right.
That new building right there will sort of it'll look a lot nicer.
Very modern.
In my opinion.
Right.
But, and then, of course, on the far left side, you've got that. I think that was like right after I was born, like 90s, maybe, that big wing
Yep.
on that side.
Yep.
It's sort of a funny, hot story because of that.
I mean, the whole thing is a mismatch. And,
Yeah.
and when I think of the millions and millions of dollars that have been put into this, clearly that's what they need to do. They're not going to tear it down and start all over again. So it's a patchwork of buildings. But yeah, pretty cool story with the whole thing. And think of how many lives have been through there.
Oh my God.
Think of the emotions, both joyful and sadness, that have been on that property. And wow, what a powerful photo and powerful building.
So when you came to Tampa, where were you coming from? And when you were a kid?
South Carolina.
South Carolina?
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up on Davis Islands in the 1960s?
Not like it is now. It was not the golf cart, place to be kind of community. It was kind of dirty. The phosphate mines, and we'll see a picture of it here in a few minutes, were blowing dust all over the place. You could smell the water treatment plant that with the wind was blowing in the right direction. But nonetheless, it was you could only get there by bridge. Very safe. Rode my bicycle everywhere on that island. Good community, good people to hang out with. Met some great people. Some of them I still know, and but very different than it is now.
Yeah. Kind of a strange spot to put a hospital. Linda Salsona was on the show talking about that. If you could.
It's because he donated the land.
Right. But going back in time and thinking about that, right? Hindsight, it's like the worst place ever. Yeah. That low bridge.
Not so bright.
But in Ybor City, right? This kind of goes back to that, district of the future, right? And looking ahead. When that medical campus, the TGH medical campus in Ybor is built, think about like the jobs and the businesses and all the things that will bring into that district.
No doubt.
And as that continues to grow, maybe the services will lessen at this place. I mean, I say that, of course, but our population keeps increasing and probably never have enough room.
They're just buying more and more sites. I mean, there's a couple on Kennedy that wants a rehab center, and they just keep going because you either grow or you close, I think, when you're in the medical business. And so they gotta keep going.
One thing I wanted to ask you, I've never talked to anybody about this, but I've noticed it on maps. When you look at the original, and in fact, go back to the black and white, David. Let me see if it's in this photo. Okay, you can't see it here. Now go back to the one we were just on, David, right? The modern day. At some point, they added to Davis Islands and actually went out beyond. You can see on this photo how much they added to that front to make room for the hospital.
Right.
Do you have any photos or do you know the history behind that?
I don't know the history behind it, but when they added the emergency center, the yellow, they added land then. Not a lot, but they have added some. They've dredged it back up and added some there.
I'm pretty sure on that photo, it shows there's a parking lot out there. I'd have to look exactly. But I always thought that was interesting. I'm like, wow, they actually added on and made Davis Island a little bit bigger for that hospital after the 1920s, after it was developed.
They did the same thing with the airport. They added some land out there. They filled in a canal when they put in the airport out there too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The Davis Islands used to be 3 islands because it was all divided by canals. But they filled in that one canal, at least out by the airports, and now it's really 2 islands.
And originally it was just like a scrubby...
Two grassy islands.
2 grassy islands, yeah.
Dredged it all up.
And then Harbor Island was what? Kind of the same thing, but a little bigger?
Let's go forward.
Oh, we got some. Keep going.
So this was Seddon Island, and you can see Harbor Island is just starting. So I want to say this is in the 1980s. That's the phosphate elevator that I was talking about. Phosphate ships used to get loaded there, and as the phosphate's falling down into the holds of the ship, it just dust blew everywhere and used to blow right over on Davis Island because right on the other side of that channel is Davis Island. But that's the way that it used to look, and that's how it looks now.
Look at that. Look at the buildings. That's amazing to see the changes.
Beneficial Corporation bought Seddon Island then for $3 million, and one of those orange-topped houses right there sells for $4 million these days. Seddon Island has its own history. You know, in the 1950s, they were considering making that the new Florida State Fair site. Before that, Fred Wolf, who owned Wolf Brothers, which was a big retailer in Tampa, lived on Davis Island and said, gosh, we don't have any schools here. We're going to build a bridge from Davis Island to Seddon Island and build schools and a stadium over there. The city never adopted it. So there was a lot of play on Harbor Island before Harbor Island got developed.
Do you know if Harbor Island was a natural island?
To some degree it was, but a lot of it came from when they dredged the channels to make them deeper for ships.
Yeah, I think so. The map I have over there is from 1914, and it kind of looks like what it is, which is just piled sediment from dredging. Huh.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, keep going, David.
So back up a couple. Let's talk about one more. This is the Italian Club Cemetery. Again, cool shot. And if you look at it, up to like 2/3 of it, that's the Italian, and where it's less dense is actually a Centro Español, I think. But the reason that this photo I think is important is that recently a bunch of controversy is kicked up about this was once College Hill Cemetery. And so where the mausoleum building is down here in the bottom is supposedly that square is where College Hill Cemetery was. And they've just covered over it. And I don't know that for a fact. I know Paul Guzzo with the Tampa Bay Times did a bunch of studies on it a couple of years ago. And so again, photography for history and to be able to look back and see what was actually there is important. And go ahead and go to the next one, David. They actually expanded the mausoleum building, and so all this kicked up again in 2025 because they started advertising new places where you could go and put your family if you wanted to. You could buy a spot in there. And again, I don't want to be political about it, but it's just interesting from a photographic perspective that we can look back and see where what used to be a driveway, they stopped driving over it because I guess they suspect that there are graves there, and now it's just a grassy area. From my understanding, the Italian Club did a ground-penetrating radar study on it just to see, but they wouldn't release the results.
So that's who owns it, is the Italian Club?
Correct.
The Italian Club owns the entirety?
I don't know if they own the entirety and if the other side, being Centro Español, is actually owned by the Italian Club or Centro Español, but
They didn't release the findings.
nope. City Council.
Nope, not there. You don't want to see it. Nothing. Don't worry
City
about
Council invited them to come, and they didn't show up. Again, I don't want to start a political
No, of course, of
firestorm,
course.
but
Well, interesting.
Yeah.
I'll ask around.
Okay.
I mean, if they did find something, it would make sense to honor it. And, what was the original photo you had there? What date would be on that?
I'm going to say that's in the 70s.
70s.
Looking at the cars.
So whatever's there, it's been a long,
long
time since it was covered up.
Right.
And the College Hill Cemetery, that could be from, the early 1900s.
Late 1800s.
Late 1800s.
Right.
Wow.
And, from what I understand, again, the deed was transferred from, I think it was an African-American family, to the Italian Club. And I don't know if there was any agreements whatsoever to honor the graves that were there. And yet, in this day and time, you're right, I think it's important that at least we know what's there, even if we don't do anything with it.
Certainly. I
Yeah.
mean, all across the city and different places, there's been, even in Miami, the recent one where they were building that condominium off the river. And I think it was a related group. As they were doing excavations, they realized, like, wait a second, this was a settlement of Native American people. And they ended up finding like some sort of graves and artifacts. And Robles Park, of course, has the cemetery Zion, I believe, up there, where they found graves under some of the buildings that were built in the mid-century.
There was an article in the paper this morning, the Martí Colón Cemetery, I guess, had a piece of property that got sold to a private buyer. And he said, I will never build on it. Now he wants to build on it, and I think this just went in front of council. And I don't think there's anything they can do about it. And so there's a state law that says if you start digging and you find remains, you have to stop. So my suspicion is that he probably did some studies, and who's going to buy a piece of property and try to sell it or try to develop it if you know that there are graves there and there's this state law that's around.
Where's that property?
It's in West Tampa. I'm not sure the exact address, but it was in the paper this morning.
There's one on Boulevard. Does that sound familiar?
Is that Memorial Cemetery?
It's a huge cemetery.
Yeah.
There's a few different ones.
There are a few different ones.
And apparently the one that was for sale was never used as a cemetery, but it's within the boundaries.
Okay.
I don't know. I wouldn't trust the real estate listing. I would want to do a little ground radar to be sure. But the other thing is where Water Street used to be
Yep.
a homestead.
They found some artifacts in there.
They found some artifacts there too. And that's all this stuff is in the paper if people want to look it up. It's just
But
a fact of, time, right?
when you take into consideration Oak Lawn Cemetery in downtown, I mean, you see names that you will recognize instantly of families that were here, and it's in shit shape.
It is. I actually walked through recently.
Who takes care of
fascinating.
it? It is fascinating. I mean, you can kind of feel it when you walk in. It's pretty cool.
It's really cool.
But
Yeah.
who's supposed to take care of that? And when you look at these other cemeteries around town, who's responsible for the maintenance and things like that? And I don't have the answer.
Do you know who owns Woodlawn Cemetery downtown?
I think it's the city.
If it's the city, like there's got to be a way to rethink these. Like think about them as like a park. If it was a park, maybe there's a different maintenance schedule or I don't know. But when you walk through that one and you see like McKay,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's an interesting story to all this stuff.
Well, the same thing is true in this cemetery. You see names like Alessi.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's where
Licata.
I think my great grandparents are in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one I need to visit that. It's very traditional looking. It's all like, it almost looks like a New Orleans
yeah,
cemetery
yeah.
with that above ground stuff.
And then go forward a couple, David. One more there. Wow. Does that look familiar?
Yeah.
Lafayette Arcade. And that was actually an arcade building, which means that it's got hallways that go all the way through it with shops. There was a bank building or a bank in the very end of it, and that's actually modeled after the Flatiron Building in New York. You can see University of Tampa across the street in downtown, and then go to the next.
You can also see Snow Park,
Yep.
the smallest city park in the world.
That's right. And you can just barely see the tower of it right there. That's a Burgert photo. And look at downtown, and then look at it here.
Look how the scale shifts, and almost takes away the significance of the building.
Part of that has to do with the height. That, again, flying a drone, I'm limited to 400 feet. And so I can do my very best to try to replicate it, but I won't go any higher than that because that's what federal law says. So that's a little bit of difference, but it's still the same building and you can still kind of get the reference. That's just shot, the Burgert photo is just shot from a lot higher.
So the Burgert photo, you can see the old Hillsborough courthouse with the minaret.
Yep.
No, that's the gas tank, David. That's hilarious. This one right here. Yeah.
And City Hall.
And City Hall and the Tampa Terrace Hotel.
Yep.
God, I think I did like a write-up on the Tampa Terrace Hotel, and it had and I was looking at the history of it. That was incredible. They brought in marbles and stones from Turkey, and
So many of those places did.
oh, yeah, the materials used were like one of a kind.
Right.
Imagine stepping into a place like that back then in the 1920s or 30s, and it's from stones from halfway around the world. Talk about the intrinsic value. Like back then, that was everything, right? You weren't getting a laugh scrolling Instagram.
Right.
You were getting these sort of visceral feelings from your environment that was outside of you. And so stepping into a hotel with granites from a different place, I mean, that must have really sparked something amazing in people.
How would you like to get in a time machine
Oh my God.
and go back to Ybor City in 1924 and just look
Yeah.
and just see what's there, or downtown
Mhm.
and just look and see the architecture and the people and the coffee
Yeah.
and the cigars and the culture and the food.
The food.
Oh my gosh.
The street food.
Street food. Give me some
So
of that devil crab.
So my family was in town for Father's Day. Thank God. It was really beautiful. We got to hang out with my grandfather,
That's
and they were
awesome.
telling old stories. I was just
Yeah.
sitting there listening. It was really a beautiful kind of family thing. Thank God that was able to happen because my grandfather's not doing well. But one of the things that my aunts were talking about, they would get dropped off at the hardware store, and their grandparents would watch them. And these like little Italian dudes would come and Spaniards would come with street food.
Yep.
So there was street food in Ybor City. Like you could get like a deviled crab. You could get Piccolina or something like that. I probably butchered that word, but it was like this lollipop thing
Yep.
that they would get. Do
There
you
was a
remember any of that?
well, that wasn't happening when I was here, but I certainly have seen the photographs. There was a guy's name was Mirabella, and he had a cart that he used to take around devil crabs and stuffed potatoes. And he would sit outside of the cigar factories because back in the day, devil crabs were small enough, they were bite size. And he would have mustard because typically they were already hot. So he would have some mustard and maybe some other hot sauce. And they could step outside and for a dime get a devil crab and have a snack or sometimes just eat that for dinner. And that was just the way of the world. And how would it be to go back?
You know
and
what, though?
see
That's
some
an
of that?
amazing cultural thing we could bring back today.
We could.
Like, imagine if there was a couple little street food carts around Ybor
Right.
with all the tourism. Like,
Yeah.
I've seen more tourism in Ybor than ever. I mean,
Yep.
people showing up. And I think I've told the story before, but I saw this, must have been a wealthy couple. They had a private driver, a big SUV pull up, very nicely dressed. And the mom was like, look, kids, this is where cigars came from,
Yeah.
right? This is Cigar City. But imagine if you had street food and that same family could be like, what's this?
Yeah.
Like, let's try a deviled crab. What the
Yeah.
hell is this? A Tampa street food thing.
Yeah.
There's those little like elements you could bring back and sprinkle in. And again, you're not going to create that time machine experience.
Right.
But that would only add to another sensory input that would give you this really cool feeling about being in the district.
Well, especially for tourists,
Yeah.
when Disney World has their ice cream carts that go around, and it adds some flavor.
I mean, shit, I would get a devil crab
Who
from a
wouldn't?
car. That'd be fun.
Who
That'd
wouldn't?
be amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially since my new office will be over there.
There you go.
Yeah, this has been amazing. What else do we have? Is this your last photo collection?
That might be it. Yeah, I think so.
Beautiful. Well, Chip, listen, this has been awesome.
Good.
I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks. So, I mean, I've seen, I'm a fan of your podcast, and I've seen some other folks that have sat in this chair, man, and it's such an honor just to be here with you and to kind of experience what all this is like. Before we go, let me just say that if people want to contact me, you can do that through the oldtampaphotos.com website. If you have old photos, like the King Greco hardware store, or if you have old photos of Tampa and you want some help getting them scanned, contact me. If I get my wish, and I don't know how I can make it happen, that we could put somehow a central place where we could put old photos of your family's business and other buildings. I don't know so much about people because I think that might be too personal. But if you have old shots of things that are happening in Tampa that you think would be valuable for the history, where's a central place where we could put those where people could access them and see them? If you're going to get with me, my request is that you have the ability to give permission to publish it, which means have the copyright, because I don't want to put people's stuff out there. But if you've got old things, I'd like to figure out how we can make that happen, and just a central sort of clearinghouse of where old photos could go that people have.
oldtampaphotos.com, and then there's a contact tab if you've got your email and stuff like that on there.
Yeah.
These books are incredible.
Thank
Can
you.
you buy these online?
Yes, you can actually get them through this site. They're
So freaking cool.
yeah.
It's literally the book version of this website. Is there more in here? These books are huge, by the way,
They are
people. This
huge.
is 400 pages, I think, in each one or more. And it is a walk through history. The old bridge, etc. So these can be purchased online.
Yes. On the website. You'll see a link to that.
As well as the History Center.
I don't know how many the History Center has left. They had some. I haven't heard from them in a while, which tells me they probably still have some, but I don't know what they're doing because their bookstore is very small.
So it's Burgert Brothers. Look again.
Right.
And then lastly, social media.
Yes.
I know you're very active on a few pages,
Right.
and I follow, I think, all of them. But I think Tampa History is the name of one.
So the one that I have is it's Old Tampa Photos on Facebook, and it's It's a private page because I ran into some stuff with people trying to do some kind of funky things. But all you got to do is say, "Let me join," and I think there's over 1,000 members of that. But David, could you scroll down? If you're interested in Tampa history, scroll up a little bit more. Here's some references as far as there's the Hillsborough County Library, University of South Florida Digital Commons, and some other ones where if you want to see some old photographs online, just beautiful collections of a lot of different stuff. There's also the Library of Congress online where you can see cool vintage photos too.
Tampa Pix, TampaPix.com. I've been a nerd for that site for many years.
Yeah.
That one's a lot of fun too.
A lot of fun.
A lot of really cool old stories that have been pieced together through news articles and photographies on there.
Yeah, his stories are very linear because he starts from the beginning and goes through all of the references and things like that. I guess the one difficult one, probably the most one difficult to navigate, is the USF site. I don't know why, but if you go on there and you look for photos, there are no thumbnails. It'll give you a description, and you got to click on them one at a time. And boy, it's just a thorn in the butt. But still, some really good content if you want to fight the fight.
Beautiful. Well, thanks again.
Thank you,
I appreciate
sir.
it.
Appreciate
All right,
it.
bye everybody. See y'all next week.